Children who have multiple positive experiences outdoors in nature are much more likely to grow up to have an affinity for the outdoors, to have a connection to nature. I always remember spending time outdoors in nature as a child. I don't remember a time in my life when plants did not occupy a role. Hey, I'm James of Pistils Pollen, and today I'm doing something that's a little outside my wheelhouse. It's not something that I think I've ever done before. I've done so many lives on TikTok and Instagram back in the day. I haven't done one of those in a long time. A lot of you have written me in comments or messaged me, and you've got questions, really great questions, and I get to have a great conversation with a handful of you from time to time who are interacting with the content that I put out there into the world, or I've interacted with you on my lives on TikTok or Instagram, and I love those moments of connection and those opportunities to trade stories, to sort of chat, if you will, over the garden gate. I really cherish those moments to learn from other folks and to then reciprocate and offer something of myself back in the process. A lot of folks have asked me to just sort of open up about who I am, where I come from, what I do, what brought me into plants, and I don't know, it's been weighing on me, and I've been thinking, all right, maybe it's time to do one of these sort of meet me pieces where I just do that. So I take some of the questions that folks have written into me and asked, or some of the questions that I can recall from past live events or conversations that surprised me and sort of got me to open up on a topic that other folks were able to connect with, or that, I don't know, like I said, all of this is a little outside of my wheelhouse. I'm a little uncomfortable, not gonna lie, but I'm also excited too, because one of the things that I love about YouTube increasingly is this desire for authenticity and real human connection. I don't know, I'm just gonna try to be me and go through some questions that I know maybe some of you might have, or others of you have asked before, and get me to open up and do that. So, okay, let's go, let's see. I don't remember a time in my life when plants did not occupy a role, and there were moments in my early childhood and later childhood where plants began to occupy a bigger or a larger role. But I always remember spending time outdoors in nature as a child. Back in college, in my university days, I went to school here in Chicago at small liberal arts university, North Park University, down at Foster and Kedzie, and I did my internship there at the North Park Village Nature Center. And one of the sort of assignment readings that I was given by my mentors at the North Park Village Nature Center was this article on how naturalists are born, or how to raise children that are naturalists. And what I was reading about that, the key finding, the key argument or idea of that article was that children who have multiple positive experiences outdoors in nature with adults that they look up to and respect are much more likely to grow up to have an affinity for the outdoors, to have a connection to nature, to like to do things like hike and bike and be outside and be outdoors. And one of the, I think, reasons we were given that article to read as interns was to reinforce this idea that as adults, our responsibility was primarily to be that person, those role models, those positive adult figures for the kids who would come into our nature center and, you know, sometimes have experiences with nature for the very first time. And I actually remember, you know, we get a lot of kids from across the city of Chicago, some of whom have never been in a forest preserve or a nature preserve before. And one of the kids asked one time, like, we're out on this hike, and he's like, sir, why is there a pole over there? And I was like, a pole? I'm looking around, he's like, that pole right there. What's that pole doing there? Why is that pole there? And I'm like, a pole? I don't see any poles anywhere. And he walks up to it and he jumps on it, and it's a law hog. It's this fallen tree He had never seen a fallen tree, and he didn't even have the words for a log. He had only seen like light poles before, and that was, as a small kid, the only word he could use to identify what he saw. So that was the closest interaction. It was just sort of this moment where I realized how important my role, our role as educators and just adults in that environment, interacting with folks who may never have had and might not have for some long time another positive outdoor experience like that. All of that to say, I feel like I was really lucky growing up to have a lot of my very early memories being outdoors and outside, growing up around the water. I never really remember learning how to swim, for example, because I just grew up in and around the water. I remember being out on the farm and playing with goats and things like that. And most of those early environments were outside in the garden, outside in the woods, that sort of thing. When I became a little bit older, my next set of memories was probably junior high, I'd say, and that's when I had my own room for the very first time. I grew up in a really large family. I shared with my brothers, and I had a nice, sunny, east-facing window. I was super excited about that because mornings are hard for me. And I don't remember how or why or the story or how they got there, but I remember I had a little collection of polka dot plants, you know, those little, just like little big box store plants that you get for a few bucks. I got gifted or bought with my allowance, I don't remember, a handful of little plants that I put in front of my own little window in my own little bedroom. And I was so excited about that. And that really is the beginning of my houseplant journey. So my journey with plants outdoors and in nature starts from before I can remember. And my journey with houseplants, I would say, probably starts in the 6th grade. And I carried that love affair into college, and I don't know if I had any plants in my dorm room in college, but I was a biology major, environmental studies major, so I was definitely around them throughout that time too. So I don't know, I guess that's how I got started. Plants have always been, I would say, something of a hobby for me, right? I mean, I've already sort of expressed how plants have been in the background as a child. They sort of formed and shaped me in ways that I didn't know at the time, but I can now reflect on as being powerfully influential. They've sort of been metaphorically important to me, given my experience with my mom and my grandmother. I did try, I think, to professionalize plants, if you will, when I was in university, when I was in college, and I was studying biology, although I was initially biology pre-med for the first 3 years, and I was better with plants than I was with human bodies, or at least the biology of human bodies. And so sort of shifted that at the last minute to environmental science, environmental studies, and was lucky enough to spend some time in Southeast Asia and India, studying the ecosystems there, studying the ecosystems in the Caribbean, in northern Michigan, in southern Florida. So I was very lucky in my college days to be able to spend a lot of time seeing how plants are commercialized, the important roles that they play in agriculture, in horticulture, and then just ecologically, right? What role do plants play in terms of the human-environment interaction and ecological interactions? And so I guess I was studying that with the intent to make plants somehow my life, and that didn't turn out. And I don't know really why or how it didn't work out that way. It's not like I actively walked away or stopped pursuing plants or a career in plants and horticulture, but you know, I graduated and I had these grand plans, and then, I don't know, I got this idea to join the Peace Corps, to go abroad and spend a little bit more time learning in a cross-cultural, international sort of environment or situation. And so I started looking at those kinds of programs, and my attention during those post-undergrad days shifted, I guess, a little bit away from plants for a while to more of the human side of the human-plant interaction. And so even though I was always aware of the environment in which people are embedded, in which human societies are embedded, I was focusing a little bit more, or learning to focus and better understand, I think, the complex social interactions between human institutions and the way that those reactions and relationships can then come back and influence either positive or negative human interactions with the environment. So I was interested then in exploring the way humans degrade their environment and restore their environment, whether that's in terms of agriculture or ecology or forestry, that sort of thing. So ever since then, and that took me into my graduate studies, and then that took me into a PhD in ethics and religion and environment and society and things like that, those topics. And so I just felt like professionally I kept moving further and further away from plants. I had just published my first book, Woven Together, Faith and Justice for the Earth and the Poor. Check it out. And I had already started writing my second book. I was teaching at university, I was teaching undergrads and writing and living the life of a scholar, right? Doing the whole cool thing there. And COVID hit, and all of a sudden, like, I didn't have a classroom. The second book that I was writing felt woefully inadequate relative, or just sort of not important anymore. And so I actually remember in those very early days, like a month into COVID and the shutdowns and all that, like I couldn't work, I couldn't focus on that book, as important as I thought it was and as excited as I was to write it, because I knew that once this whole thing was over, that book that I was planning to write, I was gonna be a little different, the world was gonna be a little different. I wasn't gonna be able to just pick that book up. If I was gonna come back and revisit it and write that book, I was gonna have to write a new book based on what I was writing in that book. And so I had a lot of free time on my hands, like a lot of people. I don't know, I indulged in my passion for plants. I already had a robust collection of houseplants, and I went plant shopping, and everybody else was going plant shopping, so I bought some more plants. And one of my neighbors, thank you, Catherine, suggested I get on TikTok and Instagram, and I'm like, okay, so I did, and I made some stuff, and people liked it. I kept having fun with it, and more people kept liking it. And then before I knew it, I had a following on TikTok, and then I created an Instagram account after the fact, actually, and started sharing some of that content from TikTok onto Instagram, and then started a following or a community there on Instagram, and spent the next few years then doing plants until finally then this is like my life. This is what I do now. Like I spend every day, every week around plants, working with them, watering them, caring for them, potting them. All of that to say, I didn't come to social media saying like, oh, I want an audience. How do I build an audience? How can I like find my niche and build my audience? And that's cool, like if that's your thing, seriously, I'm not making fun of that. That's literally kind of what I did, but not exactly. What I did was like, I had this passion, I had this thing that I really loved and I cared about. I went online to share it at a very lonely time, and that passion allowed me to connect with people at a time when it was very difficult to connect with people. And it blew up. And I don't know how or why to this day that it did, but it became a thing then that I didn't really actually seek out. Actually, before COVID, I had just my Facebook account, and I was thinking of shutting that down and going off social media, because like, right, I was living the life of the mind, I was a scholar, I'm a writer now, I published a book, oh, I'm so cool, you know, like it seems sort of ridiculous now that I think about it, how different my life is from that one that I imagined at that time. And I don't know if it's better or worse than the life that I had imagined, but I'm certainly having so much fun connecting with folks every day in real time and sharing my passions. It's really life-giving work to be able to do that. And I hope that that's something that everybody gets to experience in their own way. You know, I love that it, like any passion, like any hobby, it pulls people together, right? Plants and people, like that's always been sort of a twin interest of mine. Just the way that I've understood that twin focus has been different, it's evolved, it's changed, it's grown, but those two things have always been a core interest of mine. And it just so happens that now it's sort of a smaller world and a bigger world at the same time, right? Like as an academic, when I'm studying plants and ecosystems. I'm thinking about global ecosystems and I'm thinking about communities and nation states, right? But they're very disconnected in some respect from my everyday life. It's not very often I get to travel to the Ghats of southern India or the rainforests of Brazil, right? That doesn't happen every day for me. But houseplants are there. They're there every single day. And I think about that and my relationship to them, the relationship of my family members, of my friends and family when they come and visit, of my little dog Dolce. When he's in the home, they're always there and they're always present. And so that twin focus has always been there. It's just changed. Like any hobby, like any passion, I love that plants have the power to bring people together. Yeah, at the end of the day, this can be an isolated thing that I just do and I stay home. And there's days for that when I just stay home and it's me and my plants and a cup of coffee and I shut the world out and I enjoy this little sanctuary that I've created for myself. There were so many of those days during COVID especially, where this was such a wonderful passion and a hobby that created a sanctuary of safety and joy and love and protection for me. Now that the world is a little bit more opened up again, one of the things that I love about it is that I can still enjoy that, but I can also connect with plants and people through meetups and the local plant care community. I love that the people in my garden group are some of the most generous people, right? So willing and generous with their time and their knowledge and their care and their energy. I mean, the plant community, I would include people who are volunteering in their local parks and neighborhoods to plant natives and to plant pollinator gardens for bees, right, who are making their migrations, and butterflies and weeding out invasives and just creating these spaces, these habitats that are good not just for people, but also for pollinators and birds and wildlife and things like that. So there is a lot that we've seen over the last few years, especially where you see these markups, you see people taking endangered plants. The endangered species trade is still very alive and well, and it's particularly rampant in the plant care community with this turn toward rare and collectible plants. Unfortunately, even though there are some really good, responsible growers out there who are trying to make some of these plants more widely available using really good, sound, responsible techniques and practices, there are unfortunately bad actors like there is in every hobby and every industry. And I think the growing popularity and interest in plants and plant care has unfortunately also grown that small group of bad actors into an increasingly larger group. I do think it is important for us to, as plant parents, to be always mindful of our role and our relationship in that sort of global set of relationships, right? Are the plants that I am inviting into my home with every good intent, have they been responsibly sourced? Are they endangering local populations of ecosystems and plants in their native habitats? Obviously, I don't think a lot of us want to do that or be a part of that or would even willingly do that if we knew that's what we were a part of. But we can't do anything about something we don't know about. And so I think it is a little bit important to pay some attention to that. So in high school, I was very shy. I was not very sociable, did not have very many friends. I was bullied. I was very studious, so that hasn't changed. Yeah, so the idea that I'd be on social media, interacting with people every single day, creating content to share, I don't think my high school brain could have ever imagined that was something that A, that I would ever seek out, and that B, that I would even be moderately good enough at to be mortified. And I don't know, maybe after today, it's I will be mortified. But no, definitely I could not have envisioned doing anything like this. I thought I was gonna be a veterinarian or a physician or something like that. That one's a little harder to define for me. Like what joy, what is it about plants? And I feel like that's something that, I don't know, maybe because I do come from a philosophy, theology background where I'm thinking about the metaphorical meanings of things, the symbols, the symbolic meaning of ideas and images. I don't know, I have a really hard time answering that. I know that, I see, I'm getting nervous answering this question. I think, though, that perhaps it's the activity of caring about something and focusing on something that is outside myself. Allowing myself to get outside of my own head sometimes is an activity akin to meditation or prayer, right? That idea that you can sometimes let your mind rest a little bit by letting your hands work, or to allow your mind to refocus on something outside of itself still allows that mind to rest a little bit. Maybe plants do that for me. Maybe there's one aspect of plant care that allows me, by having to be mindful of their needs all the time, to have to repot them, to ask myself constantly, do you have enough light? Do you have enough water? Why are you sick? Why are you dropping your leaves? Are you root bound? Is it time to repot you? Do you need more nutrients? Maybe it's that activity of focusing and just sort of mindful meditation or mindfulness that is very comforting to me. And I don't know, I have some other ideas, but I don't know that they're all particularly interesting or insightful. So maybe that's something we could talk more about later.